compelling. You're going to hear a story this week that the word compelling describes everything about it. Imagine being in a situation where you have to rely on other people for everything, even your life. The first pillar of the stewardship is hospitality, being a visible sign of God's love.
I never could bring myself to pray that I'd get a transplant because I knew that for me to get organs from someone else, another family is going to have to endure a tragedy.
He was 45 years old when he had been out running and couldn't run a mile.
Compared to my other siblings, I was always a little more involved in the sports, and so he would run with me all the time, like after school, to get in shape for soccer.
I became slower and slower when I was running. I'd have to stop and catch my breath. I used to run the square mile with my daughters, training for soccer, and then I'd have to stop after 3 miles and catch my breath, and then I could only go 2 miles, and then I could go 1 mile, and I just thought, something wasn't right.
Not being able to complete a mile, he said, I'm going to the doctor to see what's going on here.
They first told me here in Wichita that it looked like I had a heart attack, and I was really upset. In fact, I caused a scene. I was even broke down and started crying in the waiting room.
And I remember going into that next heart doctor's appointment with him, and I said to the doctor, could this possibly be amyloidosis, which is what his mom died from? And you could just see the light bulb go off in the doctor's eyes, thinking, this might be it.
And he said, well, you're going to go up to Mayo and we're going to check you out. And after that process and a lot of testing, they were able to biopsy it and diagnose it. It was the familial inheritable kind of amyloidosis that I had.
When Kevin found out that he had amyloidosis, it was devastating to him because he knew there was no cure. He knew that his mom died of it so young, and his only thought was, I'm not going to see my kids graduate. I'm not going to be able to walk my daughters down the aisle.
Once he got sick, you could tell he really did start to pray more. We had a picture of Father Capon show up in different places in the house because he'd start praying.
And I have my Father Capon prayer that I would pray every day, and then I would list all the people that I knew that were having health difficulties and challenges. They say God talks to you in the spaces between your heartbeats, so you really have to just be quiet and I think be present to try to hear what he's telling you.
It was just amazing how people just came out of the woodworks to help me. We have a lot of friends, we have a lot of family that all were contacting me saying, what can I do? And I said, you want to help? I'll give you some things you can do to help. And people really like that, I think, when you accept an offer to help.
I was on some experimental drug trials at Johns Hopkins, but the only cure would be a liver transplant and a heart transplant. I was in pretty bad shape, and they said, well, it's going to take 1 to 2 years, and you're not going to make it that long. So, I was really kind of down in the dumps at that point.
But one of the requirements to be on the list was you had to be able to get to the Mayo Clinic in 4 hours. I know a couple people that have got either have planes or have access to planes, and I went by Kevin's office and said, I understand that you've decided to be on the transplant list. I understand the requirements, and I want to let you know that I'll make the plane available to you.
I was really relieved that I had that option because a lot of people have to just relocate up there for a couple years and live close.
If you get the phone call, you call me, regardless of what time it is, and we'll be in a Mayo Clinic in 4 hours.
He said, don't wait till the last minute, whatever you do. I said, don't worry. It's going to be 1 to 2 years, so we'll get together and get this lined out.
After having said all of that, I wasn't sure how all that was going to work out. But, whatever it took to make it happen, I was going to make it happen because the Ratherts are really good people.
The phone has the little voice thing that comes on. It said, call from Mayo Clinic. And we're like, that's weird, because it was like 9:30 or 10 on a Sunday night.
I, of course, give it to Kevin saying, Kevin, it's Mayo Clinic calling. You want to get that? He's upstairs. I'm downstairs.
Then my dad called my mom and was like, they have a heart.
It was basically a miracle. They put me on a list on a Monday, and that Sunday night, I got the call from Mayo that they had the perfect match for me, and I needed to be up there in 4 hours.
I will never forget the emotions that went through our mind. And the kids they know something's going on. Everybody gathers and we talk about this. And Kevin says, I need to call Kevin Mullen because he told me to give him plenty of notice so that he could line up a plane. This isn't any notice.
We don't get telephone calls at 10:15 at night that are, hi, how are you? I just want to check in and see how you're doing. When you get a phone call at 10:15 at night, somebody needs something, and they need it now.
I said, I know you said don't call me at the last minute, but hey, I got to get up there in 4 hours. So he said, well, let me call you back.
One of the guys that I had lined up the plane with was in Europe, and the other guy that I lined up another plane with was down at the lake and didn't have cell phone connections. The guy ended up calling. His wife said he's in bed. I said, I need to talk to him. It's a matter of life and death. I have 3 hours and 45 minutes. I need to be there in 3 hours and 45 minutes. At this point, I can't take a small plane. I got to have a fast plane. He said, well, how fast can you be at the airport?
He came over to my house and picked me up, took me to the airport, and flew up with me to Rochester.
When I saw the goodbye at the door, when he left the house, they were saying goodbye to their father forever. And when he got in the car, and I said, you're coming back. I don't know why everybody's getting so nervous. You're coming back. In my mind, there was never any other conclusion other than he was going to come through the success of this operation.
I've never been in a jet like that before. They rolled out a little red carpet, and I was like, this isn't necessary, guys. But, and just flew up there, and it was a very quick flight.
While we were on the plane, Kevin and I were talking about, the kids. His deal is that he wanted to be alive to walk his daughters down the aisle. And that's what we were setting out to do.
Kevin rode there with him and didn't take the flight back home with him. He stayed with him at the hospital for 3 solid days and stayed with him just to make sure he was going to get through it. And his wife met me the next morning and drove me there.
I remember they were putting me under, and I said, well, you guys forget I have a pacemaker? And they go, oh yeah, we need the code to that so we can disarm it. And it's like, yeah, it's in my wallet.
It was right around Des Moines, I want to say, when we got the call saying, we've got his heart out. He's now on the bypass machine. And I just remember thinking, okay, what's the next step? That's good.
I have never in my life seen so many wires and so many tubes hooked up to somebody in my life. But it was still Kevin, and the next morning we all went in to see him, and he was able to squeeze Lori's finger. Once he did that, I knew that was a sign for me to go back home. So I came back to Wichita, and the girls were having a golf tournament that day, and I came back and told them that their dad was going to be okay.
It took 10 and a half hours, I think, but they said it was a perfect match. I got a liver and heart from a 22-year-old girl that died on a motorcycle accident.
The nurses in the ICU there after the surgery were just amazed at how quickly he was up walking. And I remember the first walk that I did with him, and he's all holding on to his little cart that has all the drip on into his IV, and he's, skin and bones. He just doesn't have any meat left on his body, and his face is sunken in, and he's just crying as he's walking, thinking, I can't believe that I'm alive and that I'm walking, and all these nurses are clapping for me. And
they kept me for 3 months, where they do all the transplant patients that have a heart transplant anyway, just to monitor them. And
all of these people had things they wanted to do for us, whether it be set up a schedule to bring food over for my kids, take a turn watching my kids, and take a turn up there at Mayo Clinic.
I think being hospitable is taking care of those that need help. When somebody needs something and you can help them, you need to help them.
For Kevin, his emotions were extremely raw, and he wanted to express his gratitude to whoever it was that had died and their family, to say, I'm going to take care of this organ.
So the first time I saw him cry is when he opened up the letter from the donors and saw the pictures of Chelsea.
I'm very thankful to have Chelsea's liver and heart, but her family, to this day, they're still suffering for her loss. I mean, they had a 22-year-old beautiful daughter, had her whole life ahead of her.
I remember all of us cried, just cried. Every kid cried, Kevin cried, I cried, reading the story about this person who now he carried inside of him.
First, you're just, grateful to have your dad back, but you kind of forget the bigger picture of like what all went into this, and there's another family out there who don't have their daughter or sister. And
you were sad for that family that they lost someone that they loved, and you were so grateful that they had given our family now a life. And when you have that type of gratitude, you want to include them in every part of your life. You want to say, you are now part of our family. So we made it a point to want to visit this family, and they of course wanted to see Kevin too.
They wanted to be around him and be by him because their daughter's heart is in his chest.
They just hugged every single one of us and cried.
And so then one of them pulled out a stethoscope.
And they wanted to listen to their daughter's heart. And when they pulled out that stethoscope, it was like, oh my goodness. There wasn't a dry eye in the room, because every person that held that stethoscope up to his heart, their daughter was reaching out to him and giving each of them that kiss of love that they needed to say, I'm okay. And it was an experience that none of us will ever forget.
I think it should be primary in everyone's life is to serve others somehow. What I'm doing more of anything, is working with people that have what I had. Some people, aren't going to survive it, but, some of them can. And I think the main thing is just never give up hope. Just like faith, never give up faith. But it's easy to say when things are going well, but when you really need it is when it's hard to have it.
The hospitality that we received from family, from friends, from strangers was something that we couldn't have gotten through all this without their help. We were very, very lucky that so many people found it in their hearts and in their generosity in so many ways to help this small Rathert family.
That was a very emotional moment for me. He placed his life in God's hand and took enormous risks to come out on the other side. It's just a great, great ending.
We just watched the story of Kevin Rathert, a man who first received visible signs of God's love and then was given the opportunity to become a sign of God's love, the first pillar of stewardship. Your challenge this week is going to be to go home. Make a list of all the people throughout your entire life who have shown you God's love. And then go through that list and begin reaching out to those people, allowing them to receive from you the gratitude that they deserve for introducing you to the first pillar of stewardship, which is hospitality.